And there's intimacy on the radio, and there's naturalness on the radio that can never be replicated on TV. The marvelous resurgence of radio as a political force in this country.
News-related radio programming is evolving.
There's a huge hole in our dialogue that can be filled by the synthesis of traditional radio and the freedom that comes from a live podcast. You're about to experience Cowboy State Politics live. Here we go. Good morning, my friends, and welcome to another incredible installment from very high above all the deleterious idiots in the Wyoming mainstream media. This is Cowboy State Politics. I, of course, am your illustrious host, David Iverson, firmly ensconced behind the silver Cowboy State Politics microphone and broadcasting to you from the base of the Bighorns at the Cowboy State Politics studio in Sheridan, Wyoming. Good morning, my friends, and welcome back to the Cowboy State Politics live broadcast from our incredible studio. And welcome back to my producer, Agent 29. Where the hell have you been?
Well, that's none of your business. But
I don't know about that.
I have been inspired, though.
Have you now?
Yeah, I'm going to take my Christmas bonus and buy a bigger thesaurus.
Oh, good. Well, I do try to keep you on your toes. Anyway, welcome back, my friends. We are in our fantastic studio. And just to give you kind of a heads up, a couple of program notes, if you will. You're going to be seeing a lot of this in the coming months of where, well, Ken is out of town, I'm out of town, broadcasting from different places. But just stick with us. We'll keep it going wherever we're at. And the reason for that is as you get towards the end of the year, Agent 29 has got more and more committee meetings, and they're all in different places. And eventually, when we get to, when is the session anyway, Ken? February
8th, somewhere in that point. And I just remember, I am going to get a Christmas bonus, right?
Yeah.
Okay, because I got to pay off this fancy new microphone.
Yeah, well, it's not a silver microphone, but welcome
It's
back
got
to
silver?
Yeah, well, it's
also got blue. Don't hold that against me.
I was going to ask you about that later. But anyway, my friends, we're glad to be back in the studio. And if you look behind me here, what you're seeing here is a hat that I sent over with a friend who was deployed to Jordan the last year. And, all I wanted was to give my friend Carmen a hat and say, hey, when you're working out, maybe take a picture of you wearing one of my hats. Well, instead, what she did is she had it signed by the 115th Field Artillery Division of the Wyoming National Guard. And, so she brought it back, and I thought we ought to put it in a case in the studio.
Did she keep one for herself?
She did not.
She might regret that. I have a T-shirt. You've seen it.
Yeah, the one in the
control room. Yeah, that I had everybody in my unit while we were over there in the sandbox sign it, and that's one of the most precious things I have.
Yeah, well, it looks pretty good in the studio.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, so we've got this, and thank you very much to Carmen. Thank you to the 115th Field Artillery Division, the what used to be known as the Cowboy Cannoneers. I think it's entirely appropriate that they let the folks from Wyoming play with all the big guns. I mean, we're the only ones that really know how, anyway.
I was a Cowboy Cannoneer. You know that, right?
I did know that.
Yes. And they had to deal with when the commander would call you into a formation. He would yell out Powder River, and the unit would come back with Letterbuck. And that tradition must have gone by the boards. We had it started in the house for a little while, and that kind of faded again. But
yeah, well,
fun little things like that.
Yeah, most of the people that were in the house when you first got in there were Democrats anyway. So, anyway, Ken, did you drive around town on Saturday at all?
No.
No? Well, you're
On
lucky.
Saturday, I was in Gillette.
Oh, that's true. You were off, gallivanting around. But here's why I ask. Because the Democrats in Sheridan County claim that there was over 750 people at their No Kings protest. I mean, I guess if they work for CNN or PMSNBC, and that's, they're looking at photos from the last inauguration, which is probably what they were referring to. There weren't 750 people here for the No Kings protest. Similarly, there were not 7 million people nationwide that protested. In fact, at most, there was around 650,000. There was that photo, and I think it was maybe CNN that was using the photo. But anyway, they tried to say, well, look at this rally in Pennsylvania. And really, the picture was from 2017, and it was a Trump rally that they used the picture from. So, I mean, wonderfully ironic. Well, we've got a lot of stuff to cover on the program today. I've got a great interview with a new friend of mine. Her name is Leslie Sawyer. She is the legislative chair in California for Moms for Liberty. And the reason why I wanted to talk to her is to get a handle on some of the problems in the education system in California and just kind of compare them to what's happening here in Wyoming. And big shocker, my friends, and I don't mean to scare you, and, perhaps you need to put your coffee down and swallow a couple times so you don't spit it across the room. But we've got a lot in common with California. And no matter what the Wyoming Education Association tries to tell you, or liberal red-coated legislators that are probably on the take from the Wyoming Education Association, despite what they tell you, we're not immune to the leftist influence in America. In fact, we've got a lot of stuff that's in common with California. So at probably the 9 o'clock hour, we're going to go ahead and play that interview for you. I recorded it, last week, I think. No, week before last, and I just haven't had a chance to play it. So anyway, we're going to let you have a listen to it, and it's really good. I think you'll enjoy it. But let's get to the news. From the Hill, the Supreme Court is going to run out of funding due to the government shutdown, the Schumer shutdown. And I quote, "The Supreme Court is about to run out of money, and federal courts across the country are expected to run out by early next week because of the government shutdown. The nation's top court, quote, expects to run out of funding on October 18th, which was a couple of days ago. As a result, the Supreme Court building will be closed to the public until further notice. The building will remain open for official business, however. The Supreme Court will continue to conduct essential work such as hearing oral arguments, issuing orders and opinions, processing case files, and providing police and building support needed for these operations. Federal courts are expected to see their funding dry up October 20th, which was yesterday. I don't know if that happened. So no more money going to the Supreme Court because of Chuck U. Schumer and the Democrats. Now, question, my friends, why is it that the Supreme Court has to continue operating? Because it's mandated in the Constitution, and the Constitution doesn't say anything that, you have to remain open so long as you get paid. It doesn't say that. The federal court, the only court mentioned in the Constitution is the Supreme Court. And so that's one of the reasons why they got to keep working.
Did you happen to catch the comments from the head of the Department of Education?
No.
She said the shutdown is proof that we don't need the Department of Education.
Wow.
I have that soundbite somewhere. I'll have to go grab it.
Yeah.
I don't have it with me here.
By the way, we need to play that game while you were out.
Yeah, while you were out. That's a different game.
While you were off elk hunting.
Yeah, the mouse will play.
Oh, by the way, I should give you an update on the whole elk hunting situation. We did see some elk, but had we got up an hour earlier, we probably would have been able to get a little bit closer to them.
Story of my life.
Yeah, I know. I'm as far as fishing goes, I'm the one fisherman in the world that will tell you that I have never caught a big fish. I've caught about 20,000, 30,000 little fish, but not a big one. Similarly, with elk hunting, every time I've had a license, I've seen the wrong type of elk, or I've seen them where I couldn't shoot them. And that was kind of the case this weekend. Though, I got to spend 4 days with my dad, which that was the whole point. It was just 4 days, me and him, and wouldn't have traded the biggest, baddest bull elk in the world for those 4 days. So anyway, that's where we're at. But Anyway, we're going to go back and try it again, probably on Thursday. Word is that there's a big, gigantic bull elk that's tromping around the cabin. So we're going to go see if we can find him on Thursday afternoon, that is. So
who would give you that word?
What do you mean?
Well, you say word is that there's a...
Oh, yes. Well, we have scouts.
Where does that work?
Yeah. We have people that are up there.
You have scouts.
We do. Mm-hmm.
Why don't you just leave them with the rifle?
Because they don't have the license.
Yeah, never mind.
See, I've exposed you. All right, here we go. So the Weston County Clerk, it now appears that Gordon wants to actually do something about this. You see, several months ago when this whole controversy erupted, Governor Gordon didn't want to do anything about it. In fact, it was Secretary of State Chuck Gray who did an investigation into the Weston County Clerk. And just to give you kind of a rehash, what happened there is she ordered the wrong type of ballots for the election. And then to cover up her error, she ordered a whole nother batch of ballots that were actually correct, and then mixed them all together. Then she didn't test the machines to make sure that the machines were reading the right spot on the ballot, and didn't tell anybody. So when the election went off, there were, like 1,200 undervotes for the legislative race in Weston County. The school board race had 5,000 undervotes, and the same thing happened with the county commissioners. And when she was questioned about it, the very first thing that Becky Hadlock, the Weston County clerk, said was, well, that was a protest vote against Representative Nyman. 1,200 times in Weston County. Well, it turns out that in the end, it was Becky Hadlock that screwed up the entire election. Secretary of State Chuck Gray did an investigation in it and recommended that she be removed by the governor. So then the governor's office did their investigation, and they concluded that there was no reason to remove her. But now things have changed since that Becky Hadlock ignored a legislative subpoena to appear before the which committee was that, Ken?
I just drew a blank.
You just drew a blank? I know.
Whether it was judiciary or whether it was that other one.
Well, no, didn't they set up a subcommittee or something to investigate?
Yeah, they did, but I don't remember which committee it came out. Probably corporations.
Yeah, well, anyway, so there was a legislative committee. They subpoenaed Becky Hadlock to appear, and she wrote a very nice note saying she had other plans and wasn't going to show up. And so that's where we are right now, and now there have been a couple of other complaints. From the Cow Pie, in an article entitled, Gordon Investigates New Complaints Against Weston County Clerk. And I quote, Governor Mark Gordon on Monday announced that he's received at least 4 more complaints about the Weston County Clerk's handling of the 2024 election. He said he's investigating the new claims and a call to remove the clerk from her elected office. Why didn't he investigate her the first time? Yeah, I don't know. Wyoming's governor on Monday announced that he's received at least 4 more. This time, the complaints focus on her filing of a post-election audit and her failure to honor a legislative subpoena to a September 29th state committee meeting. Oh, yeah, that's the other part. She submitted a post-election audit that claimed there were no problems with the election. I mean, and I don't know if it's called perjuring yourself in a letter with an audit, but in any case, she submitted a fraudulent audit to the Secretary of State's office, claiming that, yeah, there really was, nothing to see here. Don't pay any attention. Really, I didn't do anything wrong, and you should just ignore everything that you hear. Well, apparently some people are not ignoring that. Now, Gordon said that he was not eager to infringe on the autonomy of the Weston County voters by removing their elected official from their statewide office. The governor found that although Hadlock's office botched the 2024 general election in her county, which warped 2 uncontested elections, her conduct didn't constitute, quote, willful negligence or malicious intent. Do you believe that one, 29?
They're all about local control there until it has to do with, say, a lockdown.
Well, that's true. It's absolutely incredible.
Folks, I haven't forgotten.
Well, and
I haven't forgotten.
Ken, I've got actually, and I forgot about this until right now. I actually interviewed Becky Hadlock, and it's very interesting the conversation that I had with her. And if we'll tell you what. We'll take a break at the bottom of the hour, and then I'll come back and I'll play the interview from Becky Hadlock. It's fascinating because I don't think that woman could tell the truth if her life depended on it. And it's obvious, right? She ordered the wrong ballots, and when you hear the interview that I did with her, wow. Well, and she lied to me, and she lied to the Newsletter Journal, and she also lied to Chuck Gray. So, I don't see any reason why we should trust anything that she has to say. So back to the No Kings protest. Now, I'm sure that you saw this whole thing. The media is reporting that there was millions and millions of people nationwide that got out and they said they don't want to have a king. The irony being, if they actually had a king, the king wouldn't allow them to have a protest called No Kings. But anyway, from the Daily Wire, leftist No Kings protest received social media mockery. And I quote, on Saturday, millions, allegedly, of American leftists participated in the No Kings rallies. Oh, and we went by the rally on the Capitol steps on Saturday in Cheyenne. It was fascinating. There were people dressed up in costumes. There was a guy wearing a dinosaur suit, a woman dressed as a cow. I'm not even kidding. The lovely Christine has pictures on her phone that I'll see if I can remember to get them. They're absolutely hilarious. And I don't even know why these folks show up. By the way, we had our own No Kings protest, and it looked a heck of a lot better than theirs. Just saying.
I think they show up to be seen.
You think so?
Yeah.
Well, maybe.
Well, why else would you? Yeah, it's not Halloween yet. Maybe they're just really excited about it.
Well, I have a graphic of our No Kings rally. You want to see it?
Not really.
Oh, now come on now.
Go ahead.
Throw my screen up there. Uh-oh. There was our No Kings march last November was a little bit better than theirs. It's just so stupid. I don't even. You have to be brain damaged to be a Democrat. You have to be. There's no other alternative for you to think the way that you do and try to live your life unless you are brain damaged. To be a Democrat, you got to be off your rocker. But back to the Daily Wire. While the leftists marched with their poorly made signs, social media users observed and did what they do best: mock the mockable and astutely tear apart their cause. Fox News chief political analyst Britt Hume summed up the irony of the No Kings protest best. Quote, as did Blair White, who noted that if Trump were truly a king, the No Kings rally likely wouldn't be allowed. Others like Robbie Starbuck pointed out the hypocrisy of attending a No Kings rally while having supported the Biden administration's draconian COVID mandates. Let's see here. One observer pointed out that all of the energy expended on the rallies could have gone to better causes, such as, helping the homeless or feeding the homeless veterans that you haven't paid any attention to. But the whole thing is, let me back up. When the term AstroTurf first came out, I didn't quite understand what they were talking about. But even AstroTurf, it's fake grass that they put on a football field or your putting green that you've spent way too much money on at your house. But it's fake. And that's exactly what all of these protests are. They're AstroTurf.
AstroTurf has no roots.
Indeed. I hadn't thought about that. Good call, Agent 29. No grassroots whatsoever. So anyway, but let's see here. Bernie Sanders said that mega billionaires have hijacked the economy. And he said this at a No Kings protest. Senator Bernie Sanders said at a No Kings protest on Saturday that mega billionaires have hijacked the economy, slamming one of the wealthiest people in the nation. Quote, this is about a handful of the wealthiest people on earth who, in their insatiable greed, have hijacked our economy and our political system in order to enrich themselves at the expense of working families throughout this country. Sanders said, quote, I'm talking about Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, and other multi-billionaires who were sitting right behind Trump when he was inaugurated. Now, while Musk spent time in the Trump administration, the two later had a highly publicized falling out. Trump later downplayed a reunion with Musk, saying that he appreciated the tech billionaire greeting him at Charlie Kirk's memorial service. Let's see here. Trump said, I thought it was nice. He came over. We had a little conversation. We had a very good relationship, but it was nice that he came over. Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook and Sundar Pichai, the Amazon founder, Jeff Bezos, and Musk all attended Trump's inauguration. Now, so Bernie is claiming that it's uber multi-billionaires that have hijacked everything about the economy. It couldn't be that some of those billionaires are named, one of those billionaires is named George Soros, could it be? And this is, I was thinking about this morning when I was doing show prep, that it used to be, at least for me anyway, when I found a connection to George Soros, spooky dude, I was like, oh, this is a good one right here, right? We're exposing where all of the money of all these liberal causes is coming from. But now, since I found out that George Soros is involved in just about everything, I mean, if there's a liberal cause, you'll find spooky dude there somewhere. And now it just doesn't surprise me at all.
Spooky dude has some reinforcements. Look at Nancy's success in the stock market. What do you suppose she does with that extra cash?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's another good example.
Besides buying booze.
Except for buying peach schnapps. I'm pretty sure that's what she drinks. But from the blaze, George Soros Foundations funded the No Kings protest against Trump. I know this shouldn't come as any surprise to you. And I quote, left-wing billionaire George Soros has reportedly been funding foundations that financially support the No Kings protest against President Donald Trump. Liberals and others opposed to the president and his policies plan to protest throughout the nation on Saturday, but some of the demonstrations are funded by George Soros. The Fox News report says that Soros's Open Society Action Fund gave a $3 million grant to an organization named Indivisible. Now, if you remember, Indivisible was the same group that was ginning up protests at congressional members' town halls. There were 3 of them in Wyoming, 2 of which that I could tie to Indivisible. So this group, they took money from leftists like George Soros, and they used it to get huge crowds at events. And not just Republicans. It was Republicans and Democrats that they showed up and they disrupted the events. There were 2 of them that I'm pretty sure happened in Wyoming that were at least helped in part by Indivisible. One of those was in Lincoln County, and the other one was in Rock Springs. The Rock Springs one, that's the one where oh man, his name escapes me. Joe Barbudo and the Democrats showed up and tried to disrupt Harriet's event, and she made it look pretty stupid. Now, that group is the Open Society Foundations, is managing data and communications with participants for the No Kings demonstrations. The Fox News report found that Open Society had granted more than $7.61 million to the organization orchestrating the protests. Quote, we support a wide range of independent organizations that work to deepen civic engagement through peaceful democratic participation, a hallmark of any vibrant society and a right protected by the Constitution, read a statement from the spokesperson from Open Society. And here's another one that I thought of. I saw a comment on social media last night from one of the Democrats here in Sheridan County. And she said, and the post said, well, not a single violent incident. Like no one attacked anybody. Nobody, attacked any cops. Well, first, I don't think that that's true nationwide. I'm pretty sure there was some protests where were arrests made. Don't know that for a fact, but I mean, I'm highly suspicious of that claim. But if it is true, it would be the first time the Democrats didn't attack police. And if you just get on social media, a lot of people are making this same claim. Look at our peaceful protest. We didn't attack anybody. There wasn't any problems. So they want that headline. But when it comes to Portland and Chicago and especially the summer a couple of years ago when cities were burning to the ground, Portland, you remember the chop zone in Seattle? You remember that one, Ken? Where the Seattle mayor and the police force gave up a portion of their city to be run by Democratic protesters. They called it CHOP, and I used to get a kick out of all of Tucker Carlson's reports on it. He'd go and interview the Chopistanis that lived there. I mean, it was absolutely hilarious. But, you had the Summer of Rage, as they called it, and then in the recent protests, we've seen lots of left-wing activists arrested. But this one happens this past Saturday, and allegedly there were no incidences, but I don't believe that. And the Democrats are claiming that, look at us, we're peacefully participating in the democratic process with no recognition, of course, that this would be the first time that they ever did that.
Peaceful protest. Does that mean that less than a dozen buildings were burned out?
Well, mostly peaceful.
Where's the line?
It's mostly peaceful, Ken. It's not entirely peaceful.
Mostly dead.
Mostly dead. He's not dead. He's just mostly dead. All right. So Republican Senator Ted Cruz sounded the alarm of the Soros-funded protests in an interview with Sean Hannity. Quote, "There's considerable evidence that George Soros and his network are behind funding these rallies, which may well be riots all across the country," he said. "This politicized march is being organized by Soros operatives and funded by Soros money. No one denies these basic facts," Cruz said in a statement to Fox News Digital. "The Trump administration and the Republican Congress are committed to, stopping the left-wing violence." Let's see here. Democrat Senator Minority Leader Chuck U. Schumer has said that he will attend. And again, this article was written before Saturday, but here's what he said. Quote, this is what the president said, excuse me. "We're not going to allow these lunatics to rip apart America anymore. I'm never giving it so much as a chance to breathe and be free," said Trump. "Soros and his group of psychopaths have caused great damage to our country. That includes his crazy West Coast friends." And I mean, it's, again, anytime you hear of the left doing anything nefarious, you can just be sure that George Soros is in there somewhere. Let's see here. You know what, Ken? Let's go ahead and take our first break. And then when we come back, we'll continue with the conversation. I've got a little video that the president put out, what he thinks of the No Kings protests. So I'll show that to you when we come back. You are listening to Cowboy State Politics Live. You can listen to the program on YouTube, on Facebook, on X, on Rumble, pretty much everywhere. And now, Cowboy State Politics Live is syndicated on the OBBM network. That's available on Roku, Apple TV, and a whole bunch of other places. It's almost like I'm omnipresent. You can listen to Cowboy State Politics Live every Tuesday through Friday at 8 a.m. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast anywhere that you get your podcasts. iHeartRadio, iTunes, TuneIn, really any of them will work. But the easiest place is just to go to the website, cowboystatepolitics.com. There you can find all of the shows, as well as any of the articles that I might bring up during the course of a program. That way, if your name is Joe Biden and you can't remember if you had your pudding today, well, I probably can't help you with that, but I can definitely tell you why you should have never ran for president. And now, back to our program. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm your host, David Iverson, documented to be almost always right 99% of the time. Though we could never eclipse Rush Limbaugh, we could only succeed him. And that's what we do every single day here on Cowboy State Politics Live. So before the break, I mentioned to you that I did an interview with Becky Hadlock, the Weston County clerk. And now that you know all of the ins and outs of what she did, screwing up the election, lying about it, submitting a fraudulent report, all of that stuff. I'd like to play for you what she told me on the phone, and this was, man, I think this was the Wednesday after the election, so things were just getting going. So take a listen to this. This is pretty interesting.
County Clerk's Office, this is Becky. May I help you?
Hi, is this Becky Hadlock, the Weston County Clerk?
Uh-huh.
Hi, my name is David with Cowboy State Politics. I was wondering if you had a couple minutes to visit about your election results.
Sure.
When did you first notice that there was a problem with the House District 1 race?
Secretary Gray called me the night of the election.
Okay, so you didn't see, when the results came in, you didn't see a problem with them at all, or?
I didn't, because there were several races that had a lot of undervotes.
Okay, so you're referring to the... Okay, all right. We just got to hold on here. So if you're the county clerk and you've been through an election or two, you know what they should look like. You know that there's going to be a certain amount of undervotes in, just about every race. And what an undervote is when a voter leaves a space on the ballot blank. And that's, so for example, if you have an uncontested race on the ballot, there are two spots. There's the person who's running, and then you'll see a write-in. At least in Wyoming, this is what it looks like. And then you'll see another space for a write-in. Now, if there is, you see this next one in city council races, it may say select 2 or select 3. Well, if the voter only selects one person in that section of the ballot, that's counted as an undervote. Now, what happened in the Weston County election is the incorrect ballots that were printed were used, and the machine hadn't been calibrated. So the machine was reading a place on the ballot that was entirely blank, that no one would have ever written. And so even though a whole bunch, people filled out their ballot, they were given the incorrect ballot, and so the machine wasn't reading the spaces on their ballot that they had actually marked.
I just have to say that I can understand being sleepy on election day and wanting to get to bed.
Oh, well, she did too.
Yeah.
And the clerk, here's the thing. The clerk, like her one of her main jobs is to monitor the election. And so if you're the clerk, typically you don't go to bed until that whole thing is done. Well, Becky Hadlock didn't do that. She went home and went to bed before the election was finished. And Secretary of State Chuck Gray, it wasn't that he called her and woke her up. He did call her, but she didn't answer the phone. And so the Secretary of State sent the sheriff to her house to get her out of bed. That's how this whole thing went down. All right, so let's continue with what Becky Hadlock was saying. Commissioner race.
The commissioner and also the school board.
Okay, so what is in other elections, what's the normal amount of undervotes that you would see in a Weston County election?
Oh, I don't want to comment on that because I'd have to go back in my other elections to find that.
Because it would expose
your lies. It's normal for people to undervote.
When is your canvassing board going to meet?
Tentatively Friday at 2.
Okay, so it's is that the normal time? Because I know here in Sheridan County they're going to meet today, but is that normally when they meet?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So do you expect to certify the results, or are you going to do an investigation into why there were over 2,000 undervotes?
We will certify the results, the correct results, yes. We won't certify unless we have the correct results.
Okay, great. Now, last question. When did you complete the testing on the ES&S machines?
We did 2 tests. We did a test. I'd have to look back, and I'm right in the middle of getting ready for my commissioner.
Okay, so here's the important part of that. When I asked her, when did you test the machine? Did you notice the long pause? Well, we did 2 tests. Now, if you're the county clerk and you know that there's a problem with the election, one of the main questions that's going to come up, probably the first one that you're going to be asked is, so when did you test these machines to make sure that they were doing the job correctly? And you would have that information just right there, but not Becky Hadlock, not in that case. And so now Governor Gordon's probably going to do another investigation, and he's probably going to do the same thing he did before. I see no reason whatsoever to remove her. Yeah, a bunch of bull crap. All right, moving on. From the Times of London, meet the young Americans who want a monarchy, but not a king, not Trump. And I quote, in 1776, the citizens of the United States vowed to free themselves from the, quote, absolute tyranny of monarchy. But when America marks its 250th anniversary of its independence from the British Crown next year, not everyone will be celebrating. Will you be celebrating, Agent 29? No, not at all? Okay, well, you should be. 250 years, baby. Quote, I'm a big R Republican because I'm a member of the Republican Party, says Eric Zerlippi.
David.
What?
I celebrated the bicentennial.
Yes?
And spent everything I had in my celebration bank. So.
Oh, you did?
Yeah.
I mean, you're not interested in the 250th?
No, because that means I remember 50 years ago, and I don't want to be reminded of that.
Well, I often wonder when Agent 29 has a backache, if it's because he's been carrying around his birth certificate. I don't know. I was told it was carved in stone. I don't really know if that's the case. So Zerlippi here, he says that he's a Republican because he's a big R Republican because he's a member of the Republican Party. Now, he's a political science major at a North Carolina State University. Quote, but I am not a small R Republican because I do not believe in republicanism, Zerlippi says. Now, he represents what appears to be a growing but still fringe trend among young Americans, a belief that democracy is overrated and it is time to replace it with absolute monarchy. Now, why would they think that? Because maybe they're not able to get their agenda through in our republic, and so things would be much easier if we just had a king. Well, I hate to break it to this guy, but maybe we had a king with Joe Biden. No, Joe Biden wasn't in charge, so it was whomever was running the administration around Joe Biden. Now, quote, the rise of monarchism among young Americans is consistent with the number of studies that suggest that Generation Z is more suspicious of democracy than previous generations. Fewer than 1% of the over 65s are in favor of an American monarchy, but 27% of 18 to 29-year-olds in the U.S. would like to have a king or a queen, according to a YouGov poll in 2023. Now, think about that. You have 27% of people surveyed, 18 to 29, who say they would prefer to have a king or queen rather than to have democracy. I find that an absolutely shocking number.
This is maybe a little bit out of left field, but I've said for years that it ought to be required. Military service, 2 years, ought to be required. People ought to have to join the military, able-bodied. Go live someplace in a third world country. Go live someplace where there's a dictator. Live someplace where there's a king. Live someplace that does it differently from what we do. You feel a little bit different when you get home about how things really are. We miss the boat sometimes because these people have no clue what they're talking about.
Well, and it's very similar. We're kind of getting off topic here, but I think this is a worthwhile discussion. It's similar to Americans' conception of what poverty is. And, you know, you can, if you go to Google and type in San Francisco and hit the little images button, you'll probably find a whole bunch of pictures of homeless encampments in downtown San Francisco or any other city. But the truth is, if you have a pair of tennis shoes and you're packing around a cell phone, you're way more wealthy than probably 90% of the people on the world. The truth is, even the poorest of Americans are wealthier than the vast majority of the rest of the world. And I mean, again, if you're packing around one of these and you're wearing a pair of Nikes and you've got a car, even maybe a bad car, one that you have to work on, at least once or twice a month, you are still more wealthy than the vast majority of people that live on this planet. We are so incredibly blessed in America, and it really does sadden me when I hear reports like this where 27% people think that we ought to have a king. The article continues. The eldest generation is the most pro-Republican, says Zerlipy, who blogs under the alias Clements Magnolia. And obviously, the Times is talking to a pretty fringe person here. But, when you're writing a piece like this and you're from a country that actually does have a king, though the king has pretty much zero power, this is interesting to you. And I think this is interesting to talk about. On Saturday, millions of Americans attended No Kings demonstrations to protest against President Trump's perceived illiberalism. From San Diego to Boston, rallies were held across more than 2,000 American cities, with many protesters wearing frog costumes, a symbol of the anti-Trump resistance. I don't get that. There was a frog in Cheyenne. There was also somebody dressed as a dinosaur. I don't really understand that. I mean, I don't know what point they're trying to make there.
I thought that was anti-French.
I don't know.
They're the frogs, right?
Yeah, something. Outside Mar-a-Lago, where the president was enjoying a weekend playing golf, protesters in West Palm Beach held up signs warning that democracy dies in silence and dictators fall when people rise. But unlike their compatriots concerned about the future U.S. democracy, the monarchists of America, apparently that's a group, it's capitalized in the piece, are exercised for an entirely different reason. They want the USA to become more autocratic, not less. Quote, it is roughly 95% male, said Zerlipy. That's mainly due to the fact that women are not very often active within the political circles. We're also active. I don't think that that's true. Most of the wacko Democrats that you see on social media, a lot of them are women. There's this one that Christine and I laugh about all the time. We call her Crazy Kathy. She actually lives just a street over from us. But if you want to see some left-wing lunacy, look her up. Similar organizations and individuals harboring doubts about American democracy include the United Monarchist Party of America, which says that monarchy is a completely legitimate form of government. Says Curtis Yarvin, a blogger who admirers include J.D. Vance, the vice president, Steve Bannon, and the godfather of the MAGA movement, Peter Thiel, the tech billionaire. Under the pseudonym Mencius these names have just built up a cult following with his theory that the president should be replaced with a CEO monarch. And this is reminiscent of, was it Aristotle's enlightened majority, that the government ought to be run by a group of enlightened intellectuals. That most people are just too dumb and they're just sheep, and so we can't entrust them with the very serious duty of voting. They're always going to make the wrong choice. And that's why we need an enlightened majority to run this country.
In some ways, these arguments are not incorrect. I happen to believe that the absolute best form of government would be a monarchy. But that the monarch is Christ himself.
Okay, fair enough.
Okay, if you have complete, perfect love, then you would be able to do that effectively.
Well, and the truth is, Ken, that a lot of these people that are making these crazy arguments that we need a king, or a lot of the leftist protesters waving the pride flag. And by the way, when we drove by the Capitol in Cheyenne, it was a mishmash of all sorts of different people. And when I get the video from that we took over the weekend, you'll see the different signs. Nobody had a consistent message. There were pride flags all over the place. So none of it was really all that consistent. But I think we could make the argument that you weren't exactly seeing a bunch of people hauling around a Christian flag. There wasn't anybody at a booth handing out Bibles down there.
Not a real balanced.
No, not at all. In fact, we were having lunch at the Epic Egg, which, if you're in Cheyenne, it's a great restaurant. It's right around the corner from the Capitol.
Bacon.
Their
bacon is unbelievable.
It's amazing.
Now we've really gone off.
We have, but it's okay. It's our show. We can do whatever we want. Anyway, we're sitting there having our brunch because I had to finish the Saturday installment of the podcast before we left our hotel room. But we were sitting there talking with Representative Daniel Singh, who stopped by our table. And we just got talking about the protest that was happening around the corner at the Capitol steps. And, for the life of us, we couldn't figure out what the message was. All these protests were called the No Kings protests. But really, I think that it was more a demonstration of people that just want to be able to do whatever they want.
I still contend that they just want to be seen. And I think one of the reasons they want to be seen is they have to be in some sort of a camera shot in order to get paid. You have to be able to prove that you were
Yeah,
there.
maybe. I mean, and there's been a lot of reporting that, and man, I should have pulled this article too. But anyway, there's been a lot of reporting the last couple of days that all of these protesters, were paid. And it's not just if you look at their pre-made signs. Some of them were wearing shirts that had, one of them was Rise Up, monogram shirts all over the place. And I mean, it's obviously a contrived AstroTurf protest that was paid for at least in part by George Soros.
I don't remember the exact picture, but there's a picture of the crowd at one particular No Kings protest, and they're all in formation like a marching band, and there's a message there. I don't remember what it was because it didn't matter. But it was obviously very, very much pre-planned how this is going to be done, coordinated effort.
Well, and that's what the left does. That was, do you remember Occupy Wall Street? How that whole thing looked to be, pretty, just people camping out. They're just, being in the street right in front of Wall Street. Well, when the truth came out, it was funded by, you guessed it, Spooky Dude.
Yeah, the idea that 30 of the 35 tents that were in the camera angle were all identical.
I know.
Nothing to do with
They're all the same. Everybody went to Walmart or to Bass Pro Shop or Cabela's and bought the same tent. But it's all, this is completely organic and not contrived at all. I mean, it's just, I'm sick of talking about protesters. And here's the thing. If all of those people actually got involved in politics, that is, instead of just standing out on a street corner, holding flags, if they actually found a candidate that was worth supporting and they went and campaigned, we could have a discussion. I mean, just like we did here with Carly Provenza and Mike Yin.
That is a really great point.
Thank you. Thank you. I thought
and
so.
And it's part of what caught me, and I've been talking about writing a piece called, Who Am I That I Should Go Into Pharaoh? And the basis of that idea is here I was, independent carpenter, making my own way.
Yep.
Watching what's going on in Cheyenne and getting thoroughly disgusted. I could have done the easy thing, just go down and stand around with a sign.
Yeah.
But no, I answered the phone. Now
you did this to me.
Yeah.
Well, my point is that if all of these folks that are participating in these protests, and in Sheridan, I mean, it's been not every weekend, not even every other weekend, but there's been at least one a month where there's a protest. They're scheduled. They go down to the senior center and rent a room. Oh, I probably don't even rent it. But they make their signs. Sometimes they posted them on social media. Here's your tax dollars at work, letting the Democrats make signs. And then they go out and stand on the corner. And that is the extent of their political involvement. But the truth is, if they actually looked for a candidate, and maybe even a Democrat candidate, and got behind them and raised some money and went out and campaigned, we could have a discussion about the proper role of government. We could have a discussion about the direction of our state and our country. But a lot of these protesters, they don't want that. What they're interested in is disruption. It's not conversation. It's not debate that they want. They killed the guy who was offering them that very thing, who would go to college campuses and willingly sit down and debate with people. People who vastly disagreed with him. And even at the University of Wyoming, and Ken, I wish you could have gone to that thing because there were some people who very much disagreed with Charlie Kirk at UW, and he still stood there and held a dialogue with them. There were a couple of them that they didn't get anywhere in their discussion, but at the very least, they were willing to sit down there and talk. And what you'll find more often than not when talking about Democrats and these protesters is they don't want a discussion. They want their way. They don't want to participate in the democratic process because that's too hard. That's the point of this article.
I would say in trying to have discussions with people on the left, 95% of the time, they end the discussion.
Yes, most of the time.
They end the discussion, and it usually is ended with language, names. Yeah, they're not about having a rational discussion. No. And I just want to again mention when we had Mikey and Carly Provenza in here, we were able to do that, but it was close.
Yeah, there were a couple times.
If you watch the faces, you can tell it was all they could do to endure. But they did.
And I think that is the point. That and if you watch the video, and first let me just say thank you to Mike Yen and Carly Provenza for coming and sitting in the studio and actually just having a conversation with us. And the truth is, everything was pretty cordial, and nobody raised their voice. Nobody started throwing things. Nobody got angry, I don't think. But if you watch the faces of particularly Carly Provenza, it's pretty obvious what she thought of the whole conversation. But see, the reason why I brought up this piece today is the Democrats and protesters, a lot of Democrats and most of the protesters, they don't want to have a conversation because to sit down and have a debate, it takes work. And a lot of these folks, as you can tell, they really don't want to work at it because democracy, a republic, is hard work. I mean, it is, and Ken, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is pretty difficult to sit in a room with 61 other people and try to craft a policy, and you know that you're not going to get your version of it through, that there's going to be a little bit of give and take. That's hard. And it's hard to just sit there and listen to what they have to say, much less come to an agreement on anything.
It's pretty hard to get 5 like-minded people on a committee together and come up with the same thing.
Yeah.
It is. And that's part of, it's meant to be that way. If things were easy to change, things would be so erratic and so unpredictable. Things were meant to be hard to change.
Well, and government is not supposed to work quickly. I mean, it was designed to be a laborious process. I mean, it was meant to take a lot of time where you actually have to sit down, have a discussion, have a debate. You're going to have to meet somewhere in the middle to get most things through. Look what's happening at with the government shutdown right now. Okay. And I've got a piece here somewhere. I'm kind of sick of talking about the government shutdown, which is why it's buried in the stack of stuff. But you have, in the Senate, you have to have 60 votes to move anything forward. The reason why that rule exists is to protect the minority. And, Chuck U. Schumer, he's objecting to a bill that Democrats have passed at least 10 times before, that he's personally voted for 10 times before. He's just being an obstructionist. But that's okay. I mean, that's how our government was set up, that you have to have votes from the other side in the Senate unless you have a clear supermajority. But it's meant to be hard. It's meant to take time. And the reason for that is you don't want to do anything rash. When you make rash decisions, you hear this argument a lot down in Cheyenne. Well, we've got to do something. We've got to do something. We've got to solve this problem. Well, usually when you have that attitude, you end up with something that you don't want. That's really actually kind of dangerous.
That has come up a few times, even on the House floor. We have to do something.
Yes.
I have actually gone out of my way on a couple of occasions publicly on the House floor to say there are some things government can't fix. And you could see some astonished faces out there. You've got to be kidding me.
There's nothing we can't fix.
We can do anything we want. I've even heard that said just this week from some of the people on the right. Mm-hmm. We can fix anything. No, you can't.
The biggest problem that we're dealing with in politics now is a lack of integrity and a lack of God in our political system. If you had more believers, and I'm not saying we got to agree on everything. Certainly, there were a lot of things that even Jesus' disciples didn't agree on. You can read that in the Gospels. You can read that in the Bible where there were people that disagreed. And that's the society that we're meant to have. That we're supposed to sit down and talk about things and figure it out.
That's part of what I was alluding to when I said it's hard to get 5 people that are supposedly like-minded in the same room to agree. I will tell you this, though. There was a meeting this morning. I don't know how many were there because I was here doing show prep.
Thank you.
But it was a prayer meeting by House membership. There was another one last Thursday, and I think there were 28 legislators involved in that. And there were another 6 or so who had said I really wanted to be there, but couldn't make it. I just want our listeners, our viewers, to know that the people on the right, at least in the House, I'm not speaking for anybody else because I can't, we are doing everything we can to put God first and to have him guide everything that we do. And it makes some people bonkers.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely it does. Well, and here's the other thing too, that in our constitutional democratic republic, it takes all kinds. And if you thought that the founding fathers didn't disagree, go all the way back to the Constitutional Convention. Rhode Island didn't even show up. They objected to the entire thing. They didn't even want to sit down and have a discussion when we're crafting a republic. And it is incumbent upon us to have a conversation, which is why on this program anyway that I have gone out of my way to invite people that I profoundly disagree with on this program. But it is a very small number of those people that have actually agreed to sit down. And kudos to those people who have agreed. Carly Provenza, Mike Yin, Trey Sherwood, the former Chief Justice of the Wyoming Supreme Court, Kate Fox.
We've got, early in November, we've got
Ed Seidel.
Yeah, Ed Seidel will be with us.
Now think about that
studio.
one.
Yeah,
think about that.
That's a leap.
That's a guy that I walked up to and showed him a video on my tablet and stuck a microphone in his face and really, I'm pretty sure I really embarrassed him. But he's willing to come on the program and have a debate or have a discussion at least. I don't know if it's going to be a debate. Who knows? We might agree on a whole bunch of stuff. But the point is that our republic is meant to be hard. The democratic process, which, and here's another thing, right? Like if you're one of these people that gets triggered every single time the word democracy comes up, let me explain why you should just take a step back from it. A democratic process is one in which you have two sides that debate. We happen to live in a constitutional republic, which means that we have representatives that are sent to Washington to debate and vote on our behalf. The government we have is a republic that is run through the democratic process, through a deliberative body, the House, the Senate, pretty much every form of government that we have. The school board, the city council, the county commissioners, the legislature, all of those are deliberative bodies that work on a democratic process. That is, you vote on measures and you pass them. And it's the process that is democratic in a constitutional republic. And so, let's just be really clear about our definitions. Don't get triggered. Don't think that just because, one side says we live in a democracy. Okay, we don't. We live in a republic. But let's sit down and have a conversation about it. Why is it that you believe that we live in a democracy? Why don't you think that we live in a republic? Let's talk about those sorts of things. Let's have the debate. That's what we've got to do. And the truth is that more people now are, just let me give you an example here. So if you listen to the podcast while you were gone, while you were awake, and meanwhile, back here at the studio, I was actually working. Here's one thing that happened. Go ahead and show my screen, Ken. There we go. That is a poster that was put up by our pal Kylie Wall. Now, Kylie Wall joined me on the program last week to talk about her Turning Point USA Club America at the Natrona County High School. And one of the big problems she was having is her posters were being torn down. Well, after the whole thing hit the news and everything, she put her posters back up, and this was the result. And there were, according to Kylie, there were 7 of these posters that had that graffiti scrawled on them. But you can tell that those folks, whomever it was that drew on her poster. I'm trying so hard to avoid using the F word there. They don't really want to have the conversation. And let me tell you why. Because they will lose. That's why. Because deep down, they know that their ideas don't work. It's why in that piece that I brought you about the monarchists, the reason why they want a monarchy is so that they can force their views through. Because they know in the real world, those things don't work. The only place that leftist ideas work is on a university campus. And when you're surrounded by your egghead buddies and you're just debating things. They don't really work in the real world, which is why communism and socialism always fails. Let's go ahead and take a break. And when we come back, I'm going to show you what Don Lemon has been up to. I know. You don't really want to talk to him, but, it gives me an opportunity to bring really big guns into the studio and have them sitting on the table. This one's for you, Don. I'll tell you about it in a minute. Whether you're tromping through the woods, stalking a big gigantic elk, or tromping through your driveway trying to find your snow shovel, one thing you definitely don't want to forget is your feet. That's right, my friends, there is nothing worse than elk hunting or shoveling your driveway when your feet are a big gigantic frozen block of ice. I suggest you get a pair of socks from the Buffalo Wool Company. They are the finest socks that I've ever put on my feet. I'm telling you the truth, my friends. I can walk outside of the cabin in a pair of tennis shoes, and it can be 0, it can be below 0, and my feet don't get cold at all. So just get you a pair of Buffalo Wool Company socks. Go to the website, thebuffalowoolco.com. You won't be disappointed. Make sure that you subscribe and follow the Cowboy State Politics podcast. You can do that from the website, cowboystatepolitics.com, or anywhere that you get your podcasts. That way, you'll make sure that you won't miss a single episode of Cowboy State Politics. Are you tired of giving your advertising dollars to companies that absolutely despise you? Well, you should be. What they do is they take your money and then they give it to the nearest red-coated rhino Republican that they can find who's going to vote with the Democrats almost the entire time they're in the legislature. You see, you just shouldn't give those people money, and you shouldn't advertise with companies that support them. I have a better idea. Why don't you advertise with a company that aligns with your values? I'd like to ask you to consider advertising on Cowboy State Politics. I have a statewide platform, and nobody is going to beat my advertising rates. Shoot me an email. The address is david@cowboystatepolitics.com. Stop helping the people that hate you and advertise with a company that really does align with your values. Again, that address is david@cowboystatepolitics.com. I would love to get that conversation started with you. Welcome back to the program, Cowboy State Politics Live. I'm David Iverson, doing what I was born to do with talent given to me by God Almighty himself. Welcome back to the program, my friends. Cowboy State Politics Live on a Tuesday. I'm excited to be back in the studio with my producer. Once you get used to doing a show and having a producer and you figure out how you work together, then when you throw a monkey wrench into it and you got to do it all on your own, again, it gets a little choppy. It's all right. We did okay.
It's nice to be appreciated. Thanks.
Yeah, well, I'm not above giving credit where credit is due. So Don Lemon, the former host of the Communist News Network, or one of them, now he says that you should go out and get a gun. Specifically, black and brown people should go out and get a gun and exercise their Second Amendment right. And, this might be a little bit shocking to some of you, but apparently he's turned a corner. Not really, but here's what he said, and then I'm going to play for you what he said before. So check this out. Here's Don Lemon.
So people who are here legally and who can go and buy a gun legally and have a license to carry legally, go do it. Why not? Go do it. It is your Second Amendment right. So I say to all the black households, go out and get your firearm and be safe with it and keep it in a safe place and teach your kids about how to use it safely or how to stay away from it safely when they're a kid. Go and do it. If you believe in the Second Amendment, if you believe in the Constitution, black people, brown people of all stripes, whether you're an Indian American or a Mexican American or whoever you are, go out in your place where you live and get a gun legally, get a license to carry legally. Because when you have people knocking on your door and taking you away without due process as a citizen, isn't that what the Second Amendment was written for? Go back and read what the Second Amendment says.
There's why he's saying
and perhaps it will knock some sense in the heads of these people who are saying, well, it's all great. I don't believe they're doing it without due process. They're asking people for papers. They're not really beating people up. These people are doing things that are illegal. Nobody's illegal.
Enough of that. Okay, so that's Don Lemon saying you should go get a gun because of ICE. And maybe that'll knock some sense into him. So he's not actually advocating for the Second Amendment because he never would do that, because here is what he actually thinks of the Second Amendment.
Love to talk about the Second Amendment. Love to talk about the Second Amendment. Love to pose with their weapons, right? Try to make it sexy. But the Second Amendment doesn't require us to submit to a lifetime of mass carnage. That carnage is happening in our real life, not their theater of the militia. Not in their role playing, because they're playing a role, they're role playing ads. Don't play good guy with a gun for your campaign ad while Americans are dying. Don't play politics with our lives. Here's the thing about America. You have the Second Amendment, which is a right in the Constitution, right? A privilege.
Oh, it's a privilege. Did you hear that one, Agent 29?
I heard that one. I'm a little bit.
Are you triggered?
That's a good word. When I first start watching him, I'm thinking, is he saying this so that white people will hear it and be afraid of the idea that brown people are going to have guns?
Well, that's exactly what he's insinuating.
Yeah. I think maybe, the end of that first video convinced me that maybe he's starting to see a little bit of the fear of government that we have. See, when Biden's the president, they have no fear of government.
No.
But when crazy Trump, when the Freedom Caucus or any other extremist group, God forbid that the Oath Keepers should ever have any control. Now it's something to be afraid. Okay, now you get it.
Yeah.
Now you get it.
But see, Don Lemon really doesn't believe in the Second Amendment. Obviously, in the first video, he's saying, go get a gun so you can, when ICE comes to your door. That's what he was referring to.
Right.
The second one, he's saying, oh, no. All these kids that are dying, the Second Amendment, it was never meant for that. And then at the end, and he goes on for, another minute or two in that segment, but he says that the Second Amendment is a privilege. It's a privilege. And
nuts.
Absolutely crazy.
NVTS nuts.
Yep. So anyway, when the left talks about the Second Amendment, they don't really... I don't think they mean what you think they mean. Anyway, so, there's Don Lemon. He's pretty he's pretty indicative of everything that comes from the American left. All right, so week before last, I did a great interview with a new pal of mine. Her name is Leslie Sawyer. She is the legislative chair in California for Moms for Liberty. And the reason why I'm going to play this for you is because right now we are in the middle of recalibration, which, by the way, I've got a great story coming for you very, very soon about school funding. Kind of an update to the teacher raise story. But anyway, what you're going to find out in this interview is that we have way too much in common with schools in California. Now, the interview runs about 30 minutes. It's pretty good. You don't get to talk to folks from California for all that long, and sometimes we really don't want to. But this gal, she's actually helped some of the Moms for Liberty gals here in Wyoming. She knows some of them personally. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and play the interview for you. Here you go. Leslie Sawyer. Joining me on the program is Leslie Sawyer. Leslie is the Moms for Liberty California Legislative Chair. Leslie, welcome to Cowboy State Politics.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm glad we could set this up. There's shockingly a lot of stuff that California has or that Wyoming has in common with California, or however you want to put it.
Right.
Well, the first question that everybody gets on my show is, why don't you just take a minute or two and tell my audience about yourself?
Okay. I am a single mom of 3. And I was working in schools, going to school to be a teacher, and COVID hit. I was working in a school, helping with youth sports, and then realized how crazy our government has gotten. I was raised on Rush Limbaugh, raised in the church. I had all the foundations that I needed, and somebody said, hey, you should join this group. They're fighting the COVID restrictions. And I said, okay, put me in, coach. And off we went. And then we ran into Moms for Liberty, started a Moms for Liberty chapter. I run a conservative media company in Northern California, which started as a docuseries and then became a podcast studio. So we have 6 shows and growing there. And I basically just do advocacy full time. I work in local politics. I work in state politics as the California State Legislative Chair for Moms for Liberty. And then I follow national politics for fun. But when people ask what I do and what I do for fun, those two are the same. My job and my hobbies are all politics and my kids.
Well, welcome to the club, except for the kids part. I don't have any kids of my own. So as the legislative chair for Moms for Liberty, what do? You just go lobby at the legislature, or are you like the go-to person? Tell me about that.
So that is a brand new position to me. We have we have legislative committees all over the country through Moms for Liberty. It is a segment of our national organization. And we have a really great leader, Charlie, and I'm going to butcher his last name, but I think it's Mezier. He is out of South Carolina, but he is a California refugee. So he left California, went to South Carolina.
Good for him.
Right? I know. Why didn't he take us with him? And he is just helping all of us develop legislative tools, develop relationships with our legislators. We will be hosting our very first California Legislative Day in January, but it's happening all across the country. We track legislation, we go to the Capitol and we lobby, we attend large-scale events that other people are doing and lobbying, and then we put out a lot on social media to make people aware of what is going on and who's making these laws that affect our kids and our parental rights.
Yeah, that's one of the biggest hurdles, I think, that a lot of conservative groups face is that, it's no problem getting together and talking about a lot of these issues. Sometimes it's no big deal to get them to write emails. But one of the biggest challenges that I've found is getting people to, get off their hind end and actually go to the legislature. and, interact with legislators. It's a lot easier in Wyoming than I'm sure it is in California. But how do you get people motivated to get off their rear end and go to the legislative session?
Well, it's hard. A lot of people, we don't even really teach civics in school anymore. So a lot of people don't even understand how governmental structures work, right? So they have no clue. They can't tell you who sits on their school board. Most of them can't tell you who sits on their city council. Almost nobody can tell you who their county commissioners or their county board of supervisors are. And then when you get into state legislators, very few know who they even are. So then to say, hey, I need you to go down there and lobby them at their office, they have no clue what we're talking about. Luckily, we have great organizations around us that structure that and teach people how to do that. California Policy Center does a once-a-year training. It's a 2-day workshop. They have speakers come in and talk to us. They talk about the importance of getting in there. And then they actually take us to the swing space, which is the large building where all the legislative offices are. And then they teach you how to lobby your legislators and then walk us around the building and show everybody how to do it. So that was one of my first steps. Was I went to a couple of those trainings before stepping into this position. But really, it is getting the constituents to understand, getting them to know, and then you have to have a sense of urgency, right? That's how a lot of government passes bills, is they create like a false sense of urgency.
Yes.
Climate change and global warming. Oh no, we got to pass all of this stuff right now. And then that doomsday never happened, but we passed all this critical legislation under the guise of a false sense of urgency, right? So we have to create a true sense of urgency. We have to see the bills that are coming, and we have to put together social media campaigns that say, this is what's coming, this is why it's dangerous, this is how you can help. And so that's really what our focus is. And I accidentally went viral on TikTok. I say,
yeah, tell me that story. That's a great story.
Because I don't ever get more than between 500 and 2,000 views. And we have 2 extremely harmful bills in our legislation right now that are sitting and waiting to be signed by the governor. And so I made a TikTok and said, hey, Governor Newsom, these bills are dangerous. This is why. And we're coming after you. We are going to hold you accountable, whether you vote, like you sign this, which means that you voted it into law, or you abstain from voting and you just let it slide across your desk and pretend you never saw it. Then either way, that becomes a law. And if you choose the latter, we're still going to hold you accountable because you've been governor long enough. You know how this works, and you are very well aware of this bill. And so I gave the phone number to his office on the TikTok, and I asked everybody to get involved and hold him accountable. And I got 25.3, I think this morning when I looked at it, 1,000 views. And I had accidentally said, if you have any hope of becoming governor, and I meant to say president, but my daughter wanted to play Barbies and I never get that many views. So I didn't redo it. I just put it in the captions and put it in the description. Yes, I understand he's termed out. I meant president. I said governor. And it took off, and it took off like wildfire. And so that's the largest views I've ever gotten on something. But I had parents saying, I'm calling right now. How can I help? What can I do? And that's what we need. We have to, the best cleanser is lights, and we have to bring to light all things that are evil so that they can be disinfected and the public can see what's happening.
Oh, I think you're exactly right. And, it's always fascinating to me, the things that get people fired up. But usually, if you're talking about your local school district or, what the governor's going to do to your kids, that's usually a pretty easy way to get people motivated, to get them to go do something. Now, I wanted to talk to you about a couple of the things that are happening in Wyoming. And one of them, I didn't mention to you before the show, it just popped into my head. But one of the things that some of the Moms for Liberty chapters in Wyoming are fighting against is school boards restricting their ability to talk at school board meetings. I got a letter from a Moms for Liberty gal in the southern part of the state, Laura. You both of you and I know her.
Yes.
interesting. And a quick aside, I sent her a message saying, "Hey, I met your pal Leslie," and her very first thing she said was, "You need to come to Florida." I wish I could. There's something about having to go shoot an elk here in the next couple of days. But anyway, so one of the main challenges that parents are facing here is school board members just restricting their ability to talk about anything. And if I was thinking ahead of time, I would have sent you the list, but it's ridiculous. Apparently, school board members get to tell parents what they can and can't talk about. Can you just speak to that for me for a little bit?
Well, the first thing that I would do is I would reach out to one of the many, many law firms across our country that handle those types of cases. And I would ask them to look into whether that is an affront to those parents' First Amendment rights. I will say in California, they tried to do similar things. And I don't know if you saw the clip. I know it was on Gutfeld and it was on Kelly's show. But one of our Moms for Liberty members here in California actually disrobed at a board meeting.
Yeah, I played that on my show.
Yeah, so that was Beth Bourne out of Yolo County, and she's amazing. But she started disrobing because they're constantly trying to shut her down and tell her what she can and cannot do and say, and they weren't getting the picture. So she started disrobing, and she said, "Oh, so it makes you uncomfortable. But this is what's going on with our girls. They're uncomfortable." And we have other parents, I think, and he's going to be at the conference in February or in Florida, not February, that Laura's going to. And that's Pastor Arma. I'm going to butcher that one too. Arma Chachu. He actually did a whole documentary on it about parents coming to school board meetings and talking about and reading some of these books that are in the schools. And they're saying, "You can't say that. You can't say that here." And he's like, "You can't say it. Then why is it allowed to be on your library shelf? Why
exactly.
And so those battles are being fought all across the country, and they just need the correct agency to take up their cause. They need to go viral with it on TikTok. Anybody that is shutting down their First Amendment right, it is your right to address grievances with government, and school boards are your most local form of government. Now, they can, in their board policy, decide how they want to do that. They can say you have 1 minute at the beginning of the meeting to address anything and everything, period. That's it. We're going to limit it to 20 minutes. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll wrap up and let the rest of you finish. If that's how they want to handle it, they can. It's not great, but that is within their purview, and they're still allowing the law, and they're not trampling on your rights. What most districts do is they allow a public comment time for up to like 30 minutes where you can speak on any non-agendized item within the jurisdiction of the board. And then anything after 30 minutes goes to the end of the meeting. And then you can speak on each agendized item. They can tell you that you cannot speak on items that are not within the jurisdiction of the board, because then you're not addressing your grievances. They can't do anything about it. So there are boards that limit that. And if that's what they're doing, then that, is explainable. I wouldn't say acceptable, but explainable. Really, it does you no good to go up there and rant about something that's not in their jurisdiction. But a lot of people don't understand jurisdiction. And again, that goes back to not teaching civics in schools. So.
Well, and I think a lot of it, too, is parents get super frustrated. During COVID, all of us got a front row seat to what was happening in our schools, and parents freaked out, and rightfully so. And another topic that I wanted to talk to you about, and this one I think is an issue across the country, and that's just blatant pornography in public schools. Where I first became aware of it, like 4 years ago, I found a book called Lawn Boy in the Gillette, Wyoming library, and I didn't want to order it. Put myself on some sort of list, which I'm probably on a half a dozen of them now. So I just went to the Amazon sneak peek. You can read a few pages, and in their sneak peek was the most horrible thing that I have ever read. and it was, a sexual description between two fourth grade boys. And I mean, I honestly, Leslie, I had to sit down and pray immediately just to get the image out of my head. It was that bad. I mean, being a journalist, you see a lot of really terrible stuff, and that one tops the list. Well, school districts across the country, including in Wyoming right now, we've had a bill the last couple of legislative sessions to get pornography out of schools, and we're told all the time, well, no, that's censorship. You can't take it out of the library. So what's a good argument that parents should use on that one? I mean, I think having porn in a school library is kind of a no-no.
Yeah, so it is a no-no. And if you look down to the basics of it, when you are distributing, which is allowing access to this type of material, you are distributing pornography to minors, which in all 50 states on the books is illegal. Again, you have to create that sense of urgency, that public outrage. You have to have people willing to go and combat your school boards. And then you have to understand the monster that we're up against. A lot of these books are either supplied by or endorsed by the Scholastic Foundation, who does most of the schools' book fairs. It also, you have to look at the fact that their state library associations and the National Library Association endorse these books. So we have to fight it at those levels. And then you have to look at the fact that if you remove the books out of the school library, the public library, any of that type of stuff, teachers are allowed to have their own classroom libraries unless you go in and you attack that policy and then have regulations on school classroom libraries. And you have to understand that teachers are allowed supplemental, curriculums.
So I was going to say supplemental material, but
supplemental materials. Yeah. So they have a basic curriculum, and 80% of what your teachers are teaching is supplemental stuff. So they have the framework, and then they go choose what supplemental materials they want to use. And teachers can actually use and do across the country utilize some of this material that we deem to be harmful. Now, the thing is, Moms for Liberty all across the country, and my favorite is when they call us Book Ban Barbie, because I had Barbie birthday parties till I was 21. I am not offended by that whatsoever. But we are not banning books. We are removing pornographic and harmful material from the reach of children across the country. Who is banning books are the people who took out To Kill a Mockingbird, who took out the actual Diary of Anne Frank across the country. There's been a movement to remove that from the curriculums. What they've replaced it with, and I would encourage you to go look it up, is the Diary of Anne Frank, the graphic novel. If you look that up and you go on Google, it'll take you about 30 seconds to find the one page, because there's two pages like this, front to like side to side, that will come up. And it talks about her experience starting her period at the top of the page. And then at the bottom of the page, she is in bed next to her friend and says, can we show each other our boobs? And her friend goes, what? Why? She goes, as a sign of our friendship. And at the top of it, it says, if she only knew how bad I want a girlfriend. And the next page that's on the other half of that spread is her walking down like a entry corridor. When I look at it, I picture like the driveway to a Georgia mansion. You know, it's got the weeping willow trees and these sculptures. And it's these sculptures of these women, and the sculptures are awkward. And it says, if only people knew how attracted I was to the female body, or so, how I feel about the female body, something along those lines. Nowhere in the Diary of Anne Frank, when I read it as a child, did I read any of this nonsense. And if you look at the reasoning for it, they say that the original one glorified the Holocaust, that it depicted only the violent portions of it. And this is a whimsical alternative, or it's a look into her creative mind. And the phrasing that they use and the changes that they use to justify putting this junk in front of our kids tell us you have an agenda without telling us you have an agenda, right?
Exactly. And I mean, the agenda there is pretty blatant. And it's, not only are we throwing pornography in front of kids, we're lying to them. I mean, the Diary of Anne Frank, the reason why you put it in a school is to teach kids about the Holocaust. One of the most horrible things we've ever done as, as a people. But it's constant lying, it's constant pornography. And you're right that there are, we have every community in America has obscenity statutes for whatever reason. And the example I always use, I gave a talk at, I can't remember where it was at, but it was on this topic. And I said, why don't, if libraries are free game for everything, why don't we have a back supply, a back issue section of Penthouse letters?
Right.
Those aren't pictures, those are letters. But why aren't they in the library? And I went through this whole description. We could probably claim that there was historical value there. We could probably claim that there was, some sort of cultural education nonsense there. But the reason you don't have those in schools or in libraries for that matter is it's pornography. Right. No different than Lawn Boy or the book Gender Queer or this idiotic, graphic Anne Frank novel. I mean, it's just amazing to me. Another thing that I wanted to ask you about, Leslie, is school funding. That's a continual thing here in Wyoming, even though we spend north of $20,000 per student every year. And, the teachers union, and I would say that they don't have the influence in Wyoming that I'm sure they do in Wyoming. But the question for you is, how much do you think it actually costs to educate a kid? Are we talking 20 grand? Are we talking 30 grand? Or are we better off to just educate our kids at home, homeschool them? That's a big movement just about everywhere. Give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah. Well, there's actually an initiative here in California that somebody's trying to put through where they say, we'll give you $17,500 per kid per year. And then the school districts that kid should belong to can keep the rest, because you're right. It's upwards of $20,000 per kid. And they say the districts can keep the rest for doing all of this, and then we'll put it into an educational fund for that child. They did the math looking at private schools, alternative education, homeschool programs and curriculums. Those kids would have enough left over in their educational savings accounts to pay for college. And then they would be able to transfer any unused funds to a sibling or immediate family member that was going to college. So there obviously is a very huge waste when we look at the breakdown of funding. Everybody needs to pay attention. I don't know what you guys call it there, but we have our LCAPs every year, which is your local community appropriations planning meeting.
Probably.
Yeah. But basically what that does is it takes the huge lump sum of the money, and they have to have public meetings to talk about it, discuss, break down, and budget everything, and then have it approved through the school board or the board of education that oversees that district. And every year that is a process. Every year, very little people pay attention to it. But when you look at it and you look at what they're spending money on and what money is being attributed to, if a chair costs $50, but it's in here under $200, what are we doing? And in California, Louis Herms, who's running for governor, he just did a whole press conference on fraud and misuse of money that was found in Southern California, where they were appointing interim superintendents when money and budget things were passing, and then leaving those superintendents in when they didn't have the correct what do you call them? Not agendas, but degrees. And they weren't qualified, but they kept them in there to push through this funding. And then they traced back the money in the funding, and they found misuse and misallocation of funding. And so it's happening all across our country. And then they're taking out things like arts. They're taking out things like useful tools, the wood shop, the auto shop, the alternate programs like nursing, police, fire. There's all kinds of other programs that our kids could have access to, used to have access to, that are being stripped away. But meanwhile, they're pushing other agendas and they're coming in with these other programs. They have family planning groups like Planned Parenthood coming in. And I say family planning because that's
right.
the label that they use.
We all know what that is.
It's them and other nonprofits like them that come in and do 13 days of sex ed. Why are we wasting money on that? Why is that what we're spending money on? You should teach them this is what happens when you have sex. These are the results. These are the, dangers. These are the precautions. And that's it. Leave the rest up to the parents. In fact, maybe don't even teach that, but because they're going to argue that most households are two-parent working households, that some of this needs covered in a health class, cover the very basics. We do not need to dive into anybody's sexual orientation. I don't care what I do in my bedroom, and I don't care what the teacher does in their bedroom, and I don't think any of our kids need to know what each other does in their bedrooms, right? So keep all of that junk out of it. Talk about these are the diseases you can get. This is how pregnancy happens. And, this is why you're a boy. This is why you're a girl. Oh, and by the way, when we're teaching that in health, we're not teaching them that they can change that. Because if you cannot, and I love how Marjorie Taylor Greene said it, she's got legislation that she's trying to pass that supports Trump's executive order that would stop this for anybody under the age of 18. But if you cannot smoke, you cannot buy a lotto ticket, you cannot drink till 21, you cannot serve in our armed forces, you are not old enough to decide to chop off viable body parts. You're just not.
Well, and that's the lie that, one of the big lies that schools across the country, even in Wyoming, California, are pushing on our kids that, you can become a man or you can become a woman, even if you're, and I suppose the way I always put it on my show is I say, you can't, if you're a man, you can't become a woman any more than you can become a trout. I mean, that is how ridiculous it is. And what blows my mind, Leslie, is you go to these, social studies class and they tell you this, pack of lies. And then you walk right down the hallway to the biology lab and you can pull off any book off the shelf and it will contradict exactly what you were just told, by your so-called social studies teacher. So, and you brought up the education savings account thing. And unfortunately, I think it was a good thing that the legislature passed that in our last session. But today, our Supreme Court just struck it down. Because Wyoming's got some weird things in our Constitution. It says that we have to pay for, I can't remember the language, but basically it's pay for a high quality education. And so, for being the freedom-loving people that we are here in Wyoming, we got some socialism in our Constitution. Well, Leslie, I appreciate you taking the time to visit with me today. If people want to get a hold of you, how do they do that?
Well, I am mountaintopmedia.com. You can see all of the shows and things. You can find any of our social medias there and contact me through there. I run all of them. We the Parents podcast is mine and Katie, who is our chapter chair of Shasta's podcast, where we address a lot of these issues. Or you can reach me directly, Leslie@mountaintopmedia.com, and shoot me an email, and I'm available for questions, concerns, hate mail, you name it.
Those are my favorite.
Right.
All right. Thank you. Thank you once again, Leslie. All right. So that was Leslie Stahl, or Leslie Sawyer. During the break, Ken and I were going back and forth. Diane Sawyer, Leslie Stahl, but that was Leslie Sawyer. She's the California legislative chair for Moms for Liberty. So we're going to go ahead and take a break, and when we come back, we'll finish up with the program. You probably want to see the video of what Trump says the Venezuelan dictator is worried about. Yeah, he doesn't want to do something with us. I'll show you the video when we come back, and maybe a little video that Trump put out on Truth Social that has a particular musical artist a little irritated. We'll do all of that when we come back. I know it feels like it's going to be 60 degrees for the entire winter. But you'd be wrong, my friends. Sooner or later, probably sooner, all of that white crap is going to start flying around, and all of your fun summertime playthings that you spent way too much money on, that little side-by-side that you spent $80,000 on, I wouldn't buy one of those. But if you did, you definitely don't want it living in a giant snowbank for the next 7 months. You could prevent that incredibly unfortunate circumstance simply by calling my friends Marcos and Jesse at Morton Buildings. They are the experts in metal building construction. They've been doing it longer than anybody else around, and they do a much better job. So, to prevent yourself from spending a whole bunch of money next spring on repair bills, just call Marcos and Jesse. Their phone number is 307-674-2532, or you can check them out at their website, mortonbuildings.com. Are you one of those people that said something like this before Trump became president?
I have a house in Spain that is going to be ready right after the election.
Siberia,
Nova Scotia.
I'm definitely moving to Canada.
Straight to hell. Iceland,
France.
Asia's pretty cool.
And has the past 5 weeks just been more than you could bear? If that's the case, you have come to the right place. All you need to do is call my friend Rebecca Bextel at Compass Real Estate. She has her fingers on the pulse of the real estate market all across the state of Wyoming. Last year, she sold around $30 million worth of property. Everything from small residential properties all the way up to big giant ranches. So if you've got to get the heck out of Dodge, if you've got to be gone Johnson because you can't stand that Trump is the president, call Rebecca Bextel. Her phone number is 307-699-3519. Let me say that one more time for you in case you missed it. 307-699-3519.
I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day, don't you? Well, I can show you how. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. A new day, a new way. Watch out, I'm only gonna get stronger. I've never felt the freedom like I do. I feel stronger every day. I'm only gonna get stronger.
Cowboy State Politics is only going to get stronger. This program is expanding at a rate that, frankly, it's really hard to keep up with. You can listen to the Cowboy State Politics podcast every Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday morning. And don't miss this program every Tuesday through Friday, beginning at 8 a.m. Welcome back to the program, my friends. There's been quite a big of an issue with Venezuela recently. Well, actually, every country that their GDP is pretty much made up of illicit drugs. Yeah, we're talking about the Colombias, Venezuela, and it's. I guess, Ken, maybe we should have a discussion about this because I'm a little bit up in the air about getting rid of all of these alleged drug running boats. I mean, I realize that if you have a communist country, they're probably not very favorable to the United States. And if there's boats coming from Venezuela destined to hit United States shores, then, that is, they're delivering oodles of pounds of narcotics to America. And so President Trump has been knocking them out of the water. Well, he was asked in a cabinet meeting the other day about Nicolas Maduro. And this is from, I think this is from the Daily Wire, but it's entitled, "Trump Says Venezuelan Leader Maduro Doesn't Want to F Around with the United States." Here is what President Trump said. Check this out.
Authorize present CIA operations in Venezuela as part of...
Well, I wouldn't say that, but some interesting things are happening around the world, I'll say that.
Mr. President, it has been reported that Maduro offered everything in his country, all the natural resources. He even recorded a message to you in English recently, offering mediation. What should we do to stop that?
He has offered everything. He's offered everything. You're right. You know why? Because he doesn't want to fuck around with the United States. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
All right, so there was President Trump. Sorry for the missing that little bleep. I thought I had it. apologize, but it's my show and it's social media and I can do whatever I want. Well, anyway, from the Daily Wire, President Trump confirmed a recent New York Times report that Venezuelan officials had offered the U.S. a huge stake in the country's oil, gold, and other natural resources to try to end U.S. actions taken against his country. Mr. Trump made the comments during a meeting with his cabinet at the White House with Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky. Just 2 days ago, the president confirmed that he authorized the CIA to go into Venezuela and conduct covert operations in the country. In recent weeks, the U.S. has conducted deadly strikes off the coast of Venezuela on vessels suspected of drug trafficking, killing more than 24 people, according to figures released by the Trump administration. It's highly unusual for the president to confirm the existence of an ongoing CIA operation, as Mr. Trump did on Wednesday. But the whole point here is if you're threatening the United States, the president has the duty to defend our borders. And, for me, it would be one thing if it was like Obama killing a U.S. citizen in a foreign country with a drone strike. That's entirely different than what we're talking about here. That these aren't U.S. citizens. They are posing a threat to this country, and those drugs are going to end up on U.S. soil. And, I was watching a news report, maybe it was a news report, an article. I can't remember where I saw it last night, but the amount of drugs that are seized by customs, by Border Patrol, by the Coast Guard, by, police amount to, hundreds to thousands of tons of drugs every year. But the scary thing is that doesn't even put a dent in these countries' operations. Now think about that. You're seizing multiple hundreds, perhaps thousands of tons of illegal narcotics, and it doesn't even put a dent in their business. Those drugs are bound for U.S. soil, and, it's the president's duty to get rid of them. Now, I mentioned earlier, perhaps before the break, that Trump put out a video, and it's about all the protests over the weekend. And, there is a musical artist that is not very happy that his song was included. But the truth is, he hasn't got this amount of notoriety in years. I think this is wonderfully funny. I don't know if you've seen this, Ken, but it is pretty hilarious. Check this one. Oh, wonderfully funny. Yeah, Kenny Loggins, he's a little irritated that his song was used, and I'm sure I'll get a ding from Facebook a little bit later for playing that video. But hey, it was put out by Trump. It is newsworthy because Kenny Loggins is mad that he's got any notoriety at all. He certainly hasn't had the amount that he does today. Let's hear from the Daily Wire. Hamas, and this should come as a giant shock to everybody who thought that peace process was going to go through without a doubt. But Hamas says they won't commit to disarming, and they're defending public executions. You see, this is what happens when you try to make a deal with a terrorist organization that wants to kill you and Israel at the same time. It's actually in the Hamas charter that they want to destroy Israel and destroy the United States. And so don't be shocked that they don't want to disarm. And I quote, a senior Hamas official said that the executions that took place on Monday, they were public, by the way, they videoed them and broadcast them, were part of, quote, exceptional measures taken during war. A senior Hamas official who spoke to Reuters on Friday said that the terror group could not commit to disarming and defended the public executions. Let's see here. Reuters sat down with Mohammed Nazal in Doha, Qatar, where senior Hamas officials have long enjoyed safe haven. Nazal said that the executions that took place on Monday were part of exceptional measures taken during war. At least 7 men were shot in the back of the head in front of a crowd in Gaza after Hamas accused them of conspiring with Israel. Nazal said the executed men were, quote, criminals guilty of killing. Not unlike Hamas themselves, of course. Nazal added that Hamas would like to see a ceasefire last between 3 and 5 years so that Gaza can be rebuilt. But after the 3 or 5 years, well, then they'll continue their operations. The point here, my friends, is that you're never going to get an honest deal with a terrorist organization like Hamas. To expect that you would is not to be too blunt about it, but stupid. There's no way that a terrorist organization is going to agree to a ceasefire, and that's why they have to be eliminated. I mean, they're a group that openly kills. Well, I guess kills openly. Anyway, that murders Israelis, that has no compunction about murdering Americans. And make no mistake, there were American citizens that were taken hostage by Hamas on October 7th. So this is not something that is just limited to Israel. I mean, they did attack American citizens as well.
Yeah, even if they did agree, what's that worth?
Exactly.
You know,
they've broken every ceasefire that they've ever participated in.
And they pop up in different ways with different names. It's not unlike the redcoats here in Wyoming.
They just keep changing their names.
They just change their names so that it sounds like a new group.
That's a subject, and this is totally different than Hamas. But by the way, Hamas, it's not a ceasefire. You're going to have to clean them all out. Rats off of a ship. And, I mean, if you get rats on a ship, they're going to eat all your food and contaminate everything. So you got to get rid of them all. And that's exactly what we're going to have to do with Hamas. And even if you were to rebuild Gaza the way President Trump has talked about it, if Hamas still exists, they'll destroy everything that's there. They'll use it for their terrorist purposes. And, until you get rid of them, you're not going to have any semblance of peace.
When you go back to Old Testament scripture, God says, I'm giving this land to you, Israel. I want you to go in and kill everything.
Yeah, he said, clean it out.
Yeah.
And they didn't
do it.
Yep. Well, and now you're seeing the results of that. And the truth is, this whole two-state solution, it's a big lie, because that is essentially what the Palestinians had before October 7th. In fact, the Hamas and the PLO, Yasser Arafat, they declared their independence in 1985 at the United Nations. But pretty much Israel left Gaza. Oh, man, it was in 2010, I think. The mid, 2010, somewhere in there. But they pretty much left Gaza, and still Gaza is reliant upon Israel for water, for food, for a whole bunch of different things. But as far as their political structure, they were pretty much independent. But that's not all that they want. It is their charter to destroy Israel.
Over the last 50 years, I've seen, countless peace projects going on in the Middle East. Peace in the Middle East has been a big deal. And I always come back to Scripture. Peace, peace, when there is no peace.
No, it's you can't have, and it's like trying to have a debate with somebody who's not being honest with you. It's like trying to come to a deal when somebody is not being an honest broker. That whatever it is that you decide upon, they're going to go against the very first opportunity. That's not going to result in peace. It's not going to result in prosperity, and so you're just going to have to eliminate them.
Yeah, you've got to have honesty. You've got to have definitions. Words mean things. They have to mean the same thing consistently. Exactly
right. Now, perhaps you've heard of this one, and I don't know how you couldn't have, but Jay Jones. Now, he's the guy that said we have to kill Republicans, and he's running for Attorney General of Virginia. Well, there's this piece in the Daily Wire that says that Tim Kaine says he wouldn't call on Republicans to drop out if they had done the same thing as Jay Jones. No, he would say they have to be removed from every public office. But here is Tim Kaine saying that he wouldn't call on Republicans to drop out of the race if they suggested we should kill Republicans. Here's what Tim Kaine said.
Senator, because a lot of people look at this and I think they ask the question, if this were a Republican, would you be calling for him to drop out of the race?
Absolutely not. It's directly equivalent to things that the Republican gubernatorial candidate has publicly said, not in private text. Murder is murder and your time will come. She said that in a public meeting speaking about pro-choice activists. I've not called for her to drop out of the race. The voters began voting in Virginia on September 19th. These are fair items for voters to consider as they cast their vote. But no, we're not calling for Republicans to drop out of races. We do say, apologize.
Well, the reason why he's not calling for Republicans to drop out of the race, if they had done the same thing, is they would have to say the same thing about Jay Jones. And I quote from the Daily Wire, Kane's assertion made to host Kristen Welker of normally broadcasting communism's show Meet the Press comes against the backdrop of the scandal rocking the Attorney General's race in the home state. Democratic nominee Jay Jones, in text sent 3 years earlier, had advocated violence against then House Speaker Todd Gilbert and had even suggested that Gilbert would never change political positions unless he and his wife were forced to watch one of their young children die. Now, this is the guy that's running for Attorney General of Virginia. And the reason I bring this up is we are moving to a place where any type of political rhetoric is acceptable. You know, the Democrats, Tim Kaine, which, by the way, I've met him. He really is a giant dirtbag. Anyway, but we're moving to a place where anything is fair game. That we can, you know, if the Democrats are going to support a guy who has openly advocated for killing people for politics, what won't they do? I mean, that's the question you have to answer there. What is it that Democrats are not willing to do? Well, they've really not shown us. They haven't shown us that they're opposed to anything. And, you know, I'll go back to that sign that I took a picture of, or that I have a picture of the Sheridan Democrat protest that was out on I-90, and he's flashing, the sign has a giant swastika on it in Sheridan, Wyoming. Now, these are the same people that accuse Republicans of violent rhetoric, of, you know, us being, that call us dictators and Nazis and fascists. Oh, by the way, I totally forgot about this. Josh, what the heck is his name? Teacher, Josh Hansen, teacher at the Sheridan County District Number 2 school district. He teaches at the alternative school. I've got some more dirt on him. I'm going to show you. I'm going to tell you about that in probably Wednesday's edition of the podcast. If I can't restrain myself, we may talk about it on the program tomorrow. But there's some very interesting stuff on his social media. Don't worry, Josh. I've already taken screenshots of it. It's not really going to matter if you delete it. But the real question is, why hasn't the school district done anything about it? Why hasn't he seen any discipline? Why have we not had a discussion about all of his violent rhetoric? One of the posts on social media, he has a gallows set up, and he's suggesting that MAGA supporters need to make their way to the gallows. We're not talking about a guy that wants to have a political discussion. We're talking about a radical leftist that teaches at a Sheridan, Wyoming high school. And he also teaches an English class at the college too. But anyway, that story is probably going to come on Wednesday's edition of the podcast. Let's see here. What else do we have? I think that pretty much wraps up another busy broadcast, 2 hours on the program. Make sure you don't miss a minute of Cowboy State Politics Live. You can, if you missed it, you can always go back to Facebook or YouTube or X or Rumble, and you can rewatch the entire thing. I highly suggest you do that. And that'll do it for today. So we'll see you tomorrow, my friends, from the base of the Bighorns. I'm David Iverson, and this is Cowboy State Politics. See you tomorrow, my friends.